You've reached Monster 911, and I'm Lance Hightower. I've been taking cryptid emergency calls for over 5 years. If you have a cryptid emergency, please call our toll-free number 866-306-8085. I can help you. What's your emergency? Hello everyone. Glad to be with you once again. This is Lance with Monster 911. So I want you to go right now and turn out those outside lights, lock those windows and doors, and shut those curtains, because this next encounter story is going to be one of those episodes to remember, trust me. And if you or someone you know has seen something or frightened or befriended you, you can call our nationwide toll-free number, 1-866-306-8085. Your name will be kept confidential. Before we get to this next encounter, guys, I just want to say welcome to the Monster 911 channel. If this is your first time listening, click that subscribe button, because you're not, I repeat, you're not going to want to miss anything from this channel, folks. I want to take this moment also to thank all of you who have supported us since 2017. Yes, 2017, when we began this channel as Cryptid Brothers Investigations of Oklahoma. Because of you, we're still around and back strong as ever with a new channel name, incredible new shows for you guys. I can't wait to reveal the new shows coming out here soon. You're going to love them. You've been hearing some of our older YouTube shows lately, the way we've combined in compilations. But we're going to bring you loads more of shows from our patron exclusive show vault that you've never seen. And I've also been filming each weekend with guests and also conducting a lot of interviews from our toll-free number from that Creature Report hotline. What an incredible value, guys. So you don't want to miss anything, trust me. On a side note here, many of you have already ordered those cool Monster 911 t-shirts from our website merch store, and we'll also be having the Monster 911 patches that many of you have requested. They're coming, and they're really high quality. You can put them on field jackets, backpacks, pants, it doesn't matter. They're really pretty cool. You can also go to our website. That's where to get them. Go to our website at www.monster911.com and check out the new store. And if there's something you'd like to see in the stores, let us know in the comments of any show. And we're also on Twitter at monster_911. And we're also on Spotify, which is a podcast platform, and under Monster 911. So if you'll go visit that and tune in, you won't regret it. All the links will be down below in the show. Before we get into this next encounter story, please keep in mind, on a side note here, parents, that you may want to use some parental discretion with some of these shows that I have. These people that you're going to hear are not actors. They're real-life people, hard-working folks just like you and I that had a terrifying encounter. So when kids hear this, it's really not kid-friendly. These stories are honestly not for kids to hear. They sound great for campfire stories, but they're actually very true, very real creature encounters shared by everyday folks all across America, just like you and me. And you wouldn't want your child to have nightmares for months. Trust me on this. Now to the show. This next show was from a friend of mine who shared some of his childhood and adult memories from a location that he grew up at, just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. When he shared these stories with me, my jaw was literally on the floor. I remember that day. I knew that I had to interview him because he had a number of strange events that he couldn't shake. I could tell they were bothering him, and he did want to talk about them. They were literally terrifying him. It brought him back to that moment. You could just see it in his eyes. So he agreed for an interview, and I asked my brother Lane to come. So we both were there when a buddy of mine we interviewed at the very location that he had these experiences since childhood. These events were bizarre and strange, to say the least. The only name that came to mind for this location when he was telling or retelling everything that happened, the only name I could think of was Skinwalker Valley. So, hi everybody, this is Lance, and you haven't seen him in a while. This is Brother Lane here. He came down from Norman, and he wanted to come down to see and hear, as well as investigate, this piece of property. Now, we have a gentleman sitting off in the corner here. We didn't want to put his face on the camera to talk about his name and where this is at. I drove the rig obviously here so we can have a quiet place to talk about this during this interview. But we've known each other for a long time, and I never heard this story before. You didn't know we did this podcast for the last 2 years, and we just started communicating one day. I came out here, and I was treating your family, and you and I were by ourselves, and we just started talking, and you asked kind of what we did, and when I'm not doing healthcare.
Stuff you're interested in. What do you?
Yeah, what do I do? And I just submitted this podcast of things that go bump in the night, and that's when you said, "Oh, I got to tell you something," and so that's what kind of led into this here, and it was so interestingly terrifying, amazing that I just said, "I got to come back out." He was kind enough. He said, "I'll take off work for you guys to come out here, do an interview." And we wanted to do it kind of private like this in this rig, because some of what you're going to tell us, you really not told family members or anything like that.
No, I don't talk about this stuff. Some of it I haven't really told anybody. So we spoke.
So we spoke. So that's why it was really important to kind of get on the rig where it's private here. And we're going to go investigate a little bit today as well as tonight. That's why Lane's here, and then Bill will join us. So there's a couple different encounter stories here that we can talk about, that we're going to talk about today. But I want to go back to this creature story here regarding when you were a boy. Now, the property we're on right now, you own this property here, and you lived on this property with your mom.
It's family property.
Family property.
They moved out here in '67.
Okay.
So that's when the grandparents came in. Yeah, I moved out or lived out here with my mother since '82.
'82, and this property, as you told me yesterday, there's a bit more homes coming in here. When you drive from Tulsa out here, the homes become sparse. Mm-hmm. But this is kind of a collection of homes. Some people may call this kind of a suburb, but it's more, instead of a suburb, it's more of like a bedroom type of community where it's an isolated group of homes. You have people across the road and you have people next to you, but it's not like right next to you. They have...
It was farms.
It was farms, okay.
Yeah, basically people had their farms, and it was a community kind of together on the outskirts where, they would... Nobody wants to be totally isolated, right? So this road cut through here, and everybody would just kind of have their property, and they'd have cattle. They ran a dairy cow, and they would have pigs and stuff out here. When I grew up coming up, that was phasing out.
Okay.
But so it was a bunch of farm, and now they've built, come in and put housing additions in. So in the last 10 years, they built quite a few. Just to the east of us here. Kind of where this creek, there's a creek that comes behind the house, and it flows that way, and it ends up running off into a large river. But that area is being developed, and used to, that's when I was coming up, those ponds and that area was just woods, and that's where I would go, run around, play, fish, and carry on, as a kid, just by myself a lot of times. That's my backyard.
And at that time, too, you said, and we were talking about what's next to you over here and over here, mm-hmm. There was no open pastures. It was just woods.
So to the south of us here, there was some open pasture, but to the north of us, no. This was all woods. We were right on the wood line. This was the last house when they moved out in '67. The road stopped here, and it was just gravel going on. The paved road stopped, and so all that was woods. That's kind of opened up now.
Okay.
And even in the last 3 years, that all over there was woods. This guy cleared out probably 50 trees over there in the last 3 years, and the ice storm in '07 killed 13 in my backyard, just right here. So it was a lot more woody than it is now. And we'll see the stump or the holes where the trees were when we go down.
Okay. So this area, we would describe it. It's kind of it's not really a bottom area where I don't know if this area. It doesn't appear to me that it would ever flooded, but it's flat land here. And then right where we're at, it starts the gradual increase of these hills.
Yeah.
And you've got hardwoods out here. You have oak, maybe some elm, pecan, and you have some cedar trees. And then in this lower area here, like you have nice yard here with Bermuda, but this gentleman over here, he's got grass about 3 to 4 foot tall, kind of natural prairie grasses and brush out there.
And they'll run horses over there too.
Really? Okay, so it's kind of a mixture of open, and some people don't cut the trees near the fence line, so you have where people's sections are at.
It's country.
It's country, so it's not unlike many places across the United States, what you're going to see in Kansas, Nebraska, North Dakota, and other places across the U.S. But I just wanted to go through and describe a little bit about the layout of the land and kind of what you have. We have a creek back here.
There's a lot of resources. There's you got open
grasslands.
grasslands.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that too.
Yeah, on this set of property right here, this 10 acres. There's you mentioned the pecan. There's black walnut. There's persimmon. There's apple. There's some pear. There's wild onions grow. There's all kinds of resources.
Berries.
There's berries. We would go pick. They're not right here on this land, but right over where I was saying where I would go as a kid, where the ponds are.
Mm-hmm.
There's berry patches, raspberries, blackberries. We'd go pick them over there. Quite a few blackberries. So.
And aside from the vegetation and the nuts, you've got critters. You've got squirters.
Turkey.
You've got possum, rabbits, turkey. Deer is numerous out here, as you were saying yesterday when we were talking.
My stepfather, he harvested several deer from the backyard here. The largest one was an 8-point. It was only 120 field dress, but that's decent for Oklahoma.
That's not bad. So, lots of game, lots of vegetation, nuts, and things that you could eat off the land right here. Now, that doesn't even count when you have property like this. I'm sure people have gardens.
Yes, sir.
And they've got chickens and guineas and eggs and melons and whatnot out here. So again, I'm just trying to get a mind's eye for the people that are listening here. Again, this is not unlike many places across the U.S. There is it's an area that you would never expect something like this to occur. So on this particular encounter, take us back a little bit. You lived with your mom. You were down the hill off in the woods in a trailer, and you kind of exploring as any normal boy would. And just take us back to that day, if you don't mind, and just share as much as you want in every detail, if you don't mind.
Sure. So to my best recollection as a 7-year-old, this is when this happened. We lived in the trailer, as you said. For some reason, I don't know why I felt compelled to go down to this tree house. I had a tree house in the backyard, and it wasn't quite dark, but it was getting to be dusk. It was going to be dark, 45 minutes or so. And so I went out the back door, went down the steps. You go probably about 15 feet or so, and then you start to go down a hill, and the hill transitions down about 8 feet, and then it starts to flatten out. And so as I go down the hill and get to the flat spot, I'm looking towards the treehouse, and I notice there's something on top of the treehouse. So I slow up because I was kind of jogging a little bit down the hill, picking up speed. I slow up, and I notice there's 3 of these things, and I'm looking, and one of them's looking at me, and I see these red eyes, and I freeze in fear. I'm frozen.
And this is daylight now.
You can see. I can see clearly. I mean, it's gonna be dark here in a little bit. Like I said, in maybe in an hour or so, it would have been dark. But I can see clearly. I mean,
sure.
I can't see extreme details, but I can see. It's a creature. It's humanoid looking. It's about 4 feet tall. It had a roundish head. It had hair, kind of like a mane around its head, and just hair all over its body, kind of like if you've seen like a Chewbacca or something.
Well, like we talked about those Ewoks, like on Star Wars.
Yeah, like a Wookiee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something Ewok. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So it had hair all over its body.
Yes, and
it was on top. And I misunderstood the first time. It was on top of your treehouse.
Yeah, 3 of them. They were all on top of the treehouse.
And this was what time of the year?
I remember there being leaves on the ground. There wasn't snow, so it was fall. Yeah.
What's really interesting that obviously I took note of is the red eyes. I mean, obviously we can see the sketch that you did, but the red eyes at that time of evening in the fall, as you said.
Yes.
That you could instantly. Yes, you saw 3 silhouettes per se up on top of the treehouse, but you could see some red illumination of eyes or something. I mean, to me, that's pretty interesting there.
This is what we're going to show this. I'm going to copy this and show it clearly, but if you want to show kind of what he drew, he drew this out
on a little bit of what it looked like up close to the head and the body. He said it was more square. We talked about this, had hair all over. And then he drew a picture of where this is the tree house, and that they were on top of the tree house. So we're going to go down later to get more of a mind's eye for you guys. But the eyes stuck out, and now you have lips on there was no teeth that you saw or anything like that?
Yeah, I couldn't really make out the lips. I just the mouth, the eyes was what was striking, like you mentioned.
So were they glowing, or was it or were honestly you see the red?
Yeah, it was like a glow. I mean, it wasn't like beams was emanating out of it, but it was a light glow, as if something luminescent, like your night sights or something, would have a glow to them, but it was red.
Oh, wow.
And it was very striking and odd, and it was scary.
So when you walked up, you're how close now to the tree house?
So I would say I was probably about 60 feet away from the tree house, 50, 60 feet from the tree house.
And you notice something moving on top, you stop, and you said that there was 3 of them. 2 were their backs to you, and they were like communicating somehow.
One of the
Could you
2,
go into that?
yeah. So there was one standing here that was kind of looking at me, and then the 2 standing off to his. Well, it would have been to my right, I guess his left. One's back was to me, and the other one I could see, the front of his face or her. I don't know. I'm just saying his. And they were communicating. I just saw gesturing. I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, did you see their hands?
But I could see. Yeah, the one whose
arms moving.
The one whose back was to me. He was gesturing his hands towards the creek, and they were talking about something.
Oh,
just
wow.
Like you would see people gesturing. And the other one heard me whenever I come down the hill, and as I started to notice them, there was some leaves and there was a branch, and I stepped on some of that, and it made some sound, and that's when I noticed he was looking at me.
So that one on the other side looked up and looked at you.
Looked right at me. Yeah, and that's when I really froze. When I saw his eyes made contact with my eyes. You don't see red eyes like that.
No.
And it just froze me in fear.
And then so when he looked at you, and at that point when you guys locked eyes and you froze, you said that it looked at the other 2?
Correct.
What happened after that?
He looked towards the other 2 that had been
That were looking off somewhere else.
Yeah, they were looking off towards the creek. And I saw his hand gesture towards them. Again, I didn't hear anything, but then they both looked at him, and then he kind of looked towards me, and they immediately looked at me. The one, he went ahead and turned the rest of the way around, and they're all 3 looking at me.
So he gestured to them, the one that saw
you. Like, hey guys,
hey,
look at
look
this.
over here.
Yeah.
And then he did this.
It was
he
like
used his hand?
Yes.
Really?
He's like, hey guys, look, and then they all look my direction, and we're all looking. I mean, their hands were had fingers. It was.
They had digits.
Yeah, I couldn't count that there were 5 or 3 or whatever, but he was pointing at me.
Oh, he was pointing.
I mean,
he
wasn't
gestured
like
at you.
Yes, with his hands. Wow.
So now you got all 3 of these things, and they all look the same here with the red eyes and.
Yeah. So the big picture is kind of this looks a lot more like what it was. I was just trying on the big one. I was going to try to get more detail for the shape of the head or whatever, because it was an odd shaped head. But the lips, I couldn't really see any lips. It was just the mouth. I could tell it was big. It was a lot bigger than a human's, and I did see the one. On the left, whenever he went to say something, I saw his mouth open. I didn't hear anything, when he gestured to the 2,
right.
And I could just see darkness, but the darkness of his mouth was way larger. It was like 3 times as wide as a human mouth. That's why I drew it like that. It was a huge mouth.
Did, aside from the hair and some of the features of the mouth and the eyes red, were they wearing anything? Did they have anything that in their hands?
No.
Did you probably couldn't see their feet if it was on top?
Well, I could see the treehouse was constructed with a plywood roof, and they were standing on top of the plywood, and it had a little bit.
So it was up in the air, but where you were down sloped, you could see that from the angle. Is that what you're saying? So
yeah,
you could see the.
I couldn't exactly see their feet, but they weren't wearing clothing or shoes or anything. It looked like they just had bare feet.
Bare feet, okay.
Yeah, and when we go down here and look, you can measure it off because I went down there today and was standing in the spot trying to recall, think about this because you guys were going to come out, and it was about 50 feet.
So there was a ladder from the ground up to the treehouse.
2x4 ladder.
Was there any ladder or means of getting on top of this?
No, they would have had to just climb up there. I mean, so that the structure, it was built for children, so it was probably not 5 feet tall, maybe 5.5 feet tall inside. It wasn't that tall.
And you said it wasn't really that far off the ground. The whole thing was made. I mean, between the distance and the ground to the bottom of the treehouse was
maybe 5 feet.
5 feet. Okay.
4.5, 5 feet. The bottom rail.
So it's not like they could have climbed up on top. It's not like they flew up on top or anything like that. No. But they had a means to climb on top. Was there anything unusual on top? Any toys or anything that you had?
No, I wouldn't have. Not that I know.
It looks like the tree extends up here based on.
There was the tree. Yeah, the trees kept going. The trees were a lot larger, but to my sense is that I stumbled upon them, kind of looking at the lay of the land, kind of thing. This treehouse was right next to the creek, and and this is just something I've thought about recently. When I was a kid, man, this just scared me to death. I freaked out when I saw them, and finally I got up enough fear that I felt like I needed to just run away to try to, they were all three just staring at me, and I...
So how long did this encounter last?
I would, it seemed like it was for forever, but I was probably sitting there staring at them for a good 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds.
Okay. So between the time you saw it, one looks, turns, two look, three look... Mm-hmm. You look, and this whole encounter, 10 to 15 seconds, somewhere there, and then you finally, you were telling me that internally you were saying, leave, 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 leave.
I gotta go.
And so you didn't back out, you just turned and left.
I started to back up, and I turned around and bolted. I ran I was dedicated to running as fast as I could. I wasn't gonna look back.
And from that moment where you stopped to your trailer was...
Yeah, I would say probably, let's see, if it was 60 feet, it's probably not another 60 feet, or 70 feet. So you're looking at 120 feet or so. What?
Jeez. Well, I mean, I can't imagine, I remember a lot of times when I was a boy at 7, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, how your imagination runs rampant. Mm-hmm. And... I remember bugging my dad forever. We never went to the movies when I was a kid, but I bugged him to death to go watch The Legend of Boggy Creek. And I think everybody about our age did at that time. And, of course, when I did, I didn't tell my dad, but I had nightmares for like 3 or 4 months. But as a kid, I can't imagine seeing something. It's not in the movies. That's... not somewhere else. It's on your property. It's in an area that you're very familiar with, this treehouse. And, kids, we always amplify our imagination and things like that. So when you got into the trailer, what was going through your mind at that time? And was anybody home at that time?
I don't know if it was because of the trauma. I really don't remember a lot directly. I remember running and slamming, after thinking about it. I couldn't even remember where I ran at first, but I remember I ran inside, slammed the door, and ran in my room and got in my bed and just hid, under my covers. I just didn't know what had happened. I don't really recall having a lot of thoughts other than I don't know what just happened, and I was scared. I think I probably was praying as a kid, just please, what's going on?
Sure. Was your mom home at that time?
I'm sure she was, but I don't remember talking to her about it. I mean, I don't remember seeing her or saying anything to her.
You just kept it quiet.
Yeah, I think I probably just...
So what I was trying to get at here is that you just, you weren't a troubled kid. You were a normal young boy who saw something that terrified, but we know kids when they see something terrifying, they don't always tell their parents.
Yeah.
And because you kind of preempt that, well, they're just going to tell me I didn't see anything, so you don't say anything sometimes. So,
how can you say something about something like that?
Well, that's just it. It's hard to go out and just... That's my point, is to bring all that up to say, you saw this.
Yeah.
It was something, it was real, it was something that terrified you, and it's just indescribable to know that something like this exists. And the camera stopped here, and you guys were talking a little bit about some of the characteristics of the hair. Well, and you were telling Lane to go through that a little bit.
Well, you mentioned something about this being, a kid seeing this. So I was 7. I'll be 37 this weekend, and this affected me to the point where I have a flashlight in my pocket. When I go outside, I don't want to be in the dark because I come up on these things, and I felt like I got too close to them because it was a little dark. I would have seen them better if it would have been a little bit brighter. I would have probably seen them when I was coming down the hill instead of when I got up close. Anyway, it's affected me to where I have a fear to this day, where I'm still looking around behind me and stuff, especially when I get out in the woods. But so you asked earlier about their clothing. Yeah,
well, if
they had any clothing,
yeah,
or how it looked like if I could see their feet. I don't recall seeing toes or anything, but I think they were bare. I mean, I could see their legs, and their legs just had fur, but it was like a sheep's wool. It just seemed like a thick layer of fur that was covering their whole body, like insulating them. It was like as if it was clothing.
I'm kind of baffled here a little bit about, because I know, when we talk about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and everything has to start as an infant and work its way up to adult size. Whether you're talking human or animals, farm animals, I'm kind of puzzled at what these creatures, if in fact it is more Bigfoot related and it's just very juvenile, small ones, or if this is another type of creature that I'm not familiar with at this point. You said something, I believe you did. If I misunderstood with that they were on top of this treehouse. What you said something about their torso seemed to be out of place compared to their leg length.
Yeah. So I mentioned when we were trying to talk about, I was trying to describe what they look like when we talked the first time before I did this little sketch, and I talked about where the wild things are, how the creatures look there. The torso compared to a human torso, it was more rounded on the shoulders and especially at the bottom.
Right here.
Yeah, like through here, it was more rounded off and smooth.
Okay.
But the bottom, it was almost like where it dropped to the legs. They're like on a human, it's about the same width. Their torso kind of curved in, and it was like the legs were stuck on the bottom of the torso. It was just you could clearly delineate that there was a difference. It wasn't like they had a waist.
Oh wow.
That I could see.
Right.
So it might have been the angle or whatever, but the legs were just stuck right on the bottom. Of course, they have hair all over them. You can't.
Well, I was going to say it'd be hard to get some definition when you're looking at something, especially if you're looking at something that, wait a minute, this doesn't really exist, but I'm seeing it. But then you're saying that the fur or hair is do you remember, was it matted up a little bit, kind of curled, or was it just in length?
I couldn't see. I wasn't like flowing or anything. I think it was probably matted together like wool. It looked like it was just thick hair all over their body. It wasn't like dangling out or like flowing. It like you talked about them being juvenile. It was just weird, the proportion of their legs to their body, because the upper part of the leg was a lot shorter, and the longer part, like where the knee junction was a lot longer than the thigh. And just the way it was attached, it was definitely not it didn't look like a human,
Right.
And it wasn't a person wearing something.
Well, it kind of brings in my next kind of question here, and I know we're just kind of postulating here what it could be, but what, in your opinion, and not that you can just peg the answer, this is it, but what in your opinion do you think this might be? Or could have been?
For the longest time, because how their eyes were, I didn't know if it was something that wasn't even, it was supernatural, or something that wasn't even, really real, but I know I saw it. I know I couldn't see through it. The way that they were communicating, it seemed like they were kind of looking around, surveying, like they were checking up on things, and it didn't seem like it seemed like they had business. I know I was a kid looking at them, but it seemed weird that there was two of them over there talking. They weren't all three over there playing.
So, To say that they were juvenile may not be correct.
I didn't.
Possibly.
If they were young, they weren't. They were teenage. They weren't little kids because
Gotcha.
the way they were handling themselves wasn't like
Seemed
children.
more adult, whatever this is.
Yes.
In demeanor, in their gesturing.
Yeah.
They weren't playing on each other or anything. It was more communication.
It was business.
Business. Look over there. Look over here, guys. Look.
They didn't like me seeing them.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what was the demeanor? Did it change? How did it change?
So the eyes were rounded, okay? But when our eyes met up, in the corner of their eye, it was almost like it was sneering. You know, it was, I could see some angular, you know how when you sneer,
you could do
it draws your eyes.
You're round and then you go down to he was looking.
It was like that, sneering at me a little bit, and that's when I froze and got afraid. You know, I had the feeling that it was not good intentions. I was not welcome there.
Okay.
And it was like, hey, you know, somebody's here, and then the other two looked at me, and they were all three looking at me, and I just felt the overwhelming, kind of not like animosity, but you're not, go away, you know.
Well,
if I stayed there, it wasn't going to be good for me.
That's what I was going to say next. I know you can guess all day long and postulate what might have happened, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask if you'd have been just absolutely frozen fear, what do you think would have happened?
I don't know, but I know that I had to get out of there, or I felt like my life was in jeopardy if I didn't get out of there. I'm just going to say it that way. My life was in jeopardy, I felt like, yes.
Okay.
That's what caused me to finally, I was, sitting there looking at it, not believing what was going on, trying to process it, but it was that fear that I have to get out of here if I'm going to live kind of thing.
Sure, that safety mechanism kicked in.
And that's when I turned around and I just bolted, just ran.
Wow, that must have been a very, very terrifying event for you at that point. And, like we talk about with a lot of people that we interview, now we were face to face, but I can still see, in just talking about it, it still is bothersome because it affects people at a nervous system level, at a core level. You don't think about it necessarily when you're at work with what you do for a living and when you're with your family, but I would say that there are, of course, now we brought this up, the last month, but prior to all this, I'm still saying you probably every once in a while will think about it, obviously, because there's still details here that are very, very, you're very detailed on what you saw and how it behaved and what it did and this feeling that you got a sense of. And, people could say, well, how do you know it was thinking that? Well, I think that, and this is just kind of our belief, I believe God puts this ability to sense things non-verbally, that you can, whether you're welcome with people or animals, even animals know this, dogs know this. If it knows you're afraid of it, the dog will take advantage of that alpha mechanism.
Sense that. You've sensed people looking at you before and turned around and somebody's looking
staring
at you. You have an innate ability to feel certain things like that. And like a lot of people, you'll feel a predator in the woods if you're a hunter. You understand those feelings. The animals can feel if you have an intent to prey. A fly will be buzzing all around you and it'll land right on you. But as soon as you pick up the fly swatter and you're ready to go smack it, it's hidden somewhere.
Sure.
So
I'd fly away too.
I felt like I was in danger. I just felt like I wasn't welcome there. And I don't know what they were doing, but they had a purpose. They were communicating with each other, and they noticed my presence, and I felt unwelcome. And so I fled.
You said that you thought maybe that they were adult in nature, and that one was kind of or they were in lookout phase.
Yeah, the two.
And that's why they were at this vantage point.
Yeah, I mean, I got the feeling that they were surveying the area, and they were looking in different directions. When I approached and first saw them, the two were talking, and they were looking on the other side of the creek. There's a house across the creek in the direction that they were looking, and then the one that was by itself was looking kind of towards my house. That was the direction he was facing when he saw me, and I didn't see him turn or anything. So I just felt like either he was looking out while they were talking, or they were watching each other's backs. It just seemed like they had sense. They had an elevated position, and whenever they saw me, he alerted them, hey, I mean, I didn't hear anything, but that's what it was like. If there were people in the situation and there was 3 people there, the conversation would have been something. It seemed like, hey guys, look, and then they looked at him, and then on through at what he was pointing at, which was me, and then they're all 3 looking at me, and then I just got the feeling, like I've mentioned 6 times, and I just they didn't seem like they wanted to play. They weren't children that I felt like. I felt like they were conducting business, and you run up to your dad or somebody and you interrupt them. It was like that. I interrupted them doing something, and I wasn't supposed to.
They didn't expect you, obviously, to come down.
No, they
didn't
did not.
It's almost like they didn't want to be seen either.
No, I don't think they wanted to. Be seen.
And
I think I surprised them when I come up on them. Yeah.
And this was in the fall, and toward if it's in October-ish, maybe November-ish month. I don't know if you can recall the month.
I can't.
But that's when the light is getting shorter. So maybe toward evening, you're talking 4:30.
Okay. I don't know the time. I just know the darkness.
It starts getting shorter days until we start turning around again. So, 4:30 it starts getting dark.
Yeah, it can be dark by 6.
So we're saying the possibility of about 4:30ish, maybe somewhere in that time frame, is likely during that time of the year.
Yeah.
If there's leaves and it's fall, because I know when we go deer hunting in the fall, it gets dark soon. You want to be in your stand at 2 o'clock because come 5:30 the sun's setting. So 4:30. And
the sun was going to be. I mean, it was dark when I ran back in the house and hid under the covers within another probably 30 minutes or so. I don't know the exact time, but it was dark.
Okay. Do you recall after you went to the house and that next week or 2 weeks or even months after that event happened, did you hear of any adults talking about anything strange, or hear your mom talk about anything strange that someone saw?
No, I've never heard anybody talk about anything that they're strange out here like that. Especially not then, when I was a child. So that's a negative. The only thing I've ever heard later, I'd asked my uncle. He's 20 years older than me or so, and I'd asked him. Years later, I'd seen something.
Now, is this the uncle right here?
Yeah, this uncle lives adjacent to me.
Keep talking.
Here.
I'm gonna get a drink here.
So
you have an uncle that lives right next to you over here.
Yes, and it was when I was trying to put together. I've had several different experiences, right? And I was kind of trying to put stuff together for myself, and I figure if I've seen stuff, maybe somebody else had seen some stuff. So I just hinted around, hey, have you ever seen anything when you're out in the woods around here or driving home or whatever? And he was like, well, what do you mean? So, and I was like, well, just seen some kind of animal or something that you couldn't explain. And he said that, not really, but he said one time he was driving, and it was kind of from this area where I told you I kind of saw this up from the area over there. There's a lake, and it's around this lake area. There's a lot of woods and pasture and trees with open pasture land. So he said he thought he saw something running alongside the road, but it was like jumping from fence post to fence post, like it was real fast, and it was a step of it was going between fence posts, so like along with the fence, and it was super fast, but that each step was, I don't know, the distance between those fence posts, so it was like bounding or something. And he said it was like a split second. He saw it flash, and then it was across the road, and then it was gone. And that's the only thing.
Wow. Yeah. Well, when something happens that fast, it's hard to, just like we'll talk about here in a second, that, did I see what I saw?
Yeah.
But when you're seeing this for as many seconds as you did,
yeah, we stared off.
It's like an hour.
Yeah, it seemed like forever. And you mentioned about how detailed and thinking. Yeah, I've had a lot of time to think about that. And so when you're a kid, you don't forget this.
No.
And you're laying in bed trying to go to bed, and you can't go to bed, and you play it over and over and over, and you think about it, and because you want to explain it somehow or rationalize to yourself, because it's the kind of stuff you see in a movie or something.
Rationalize. You want answers to the questions.
Yeah, you want to know why did this happen? Why did I see them? What were they doing? Just all you don't have any answers.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to get some answers.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take, or for you just to kind of normalize your sleep again? I mean,
I still don't sleep that great. I mean, I'm up several times a night some nights.
Is it from this?
I don't.
Thing,
I don't think it's. I'm not waking up afraid of this. I'm always aware if I'm outside, especially as it gets towards the evening.
So you think of this in the evening when you're outside sometimes?
I don't think of this particular, but I know that I have to be aware that I could come up upon something that might have ill will for me or whatever.
Right.
I don't know what I'm going to run into, so I have to be prepared.
With that being said, when we started talking, you started getting into other things that had happened out here, and that. If you don't mind, now I don't know if it's associated or not. It sounds like it might be.
Yeah.
But you were talking about not too far from where your house is right now. You were over at, I'm not sure if this is you or your uncle's over here, but there was a chicken house.
So yeah, it's my grandparents. All this was my grandparents' land.
Okay.
And I grew up, they put this trailer that I used to live in back here on this land and split it up. So it's basically all the family land. And so the chicken coop, we had chickens. As I was coming up, I would help raise these chickens until I was probably about 16, 17. So anyway, I was coming from the house, the trailer that I lived in, and coming up to my grandmother's house, coming through the pasture, and I just felt something was looking at me, and which was common for me to come up and forth through the pasture. I looked over at the chicken coop, and I saw it was similar red glowing eyes like I saw that night, when I was a kid. At this time, I made a little timeline trying to put all the stuff together, and that this was years later. I'm trying to look through here. Chicken coop. So I was about 13 to 14 when that happened.
13 to 14.
Yeah, and it was like, it looked at me, and I looked at it, and then it kind of ducked.
Was it in the chicken coop?
It was inside the chicken coop. The chicken coop is a metal structure. It's probably 10 feet or so by 10 by 10 or 10 by 12 or so.
So we're going to go over there, but it's
behind that.
It's behind that fence that's leaning up that wood fence.
Yeah, you can kind of see the corner of the door of the chicken coop right through there. Okay.
So we'll go over there, but you saw something that was inside, looking out a window.
Looking out the window at me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was inside. It was squatted down the window. If I remember, it's a four pane kind of a window thing, and it was in the bottom corner pane, my left-hand side, looking and I looked at it, and that's what I had the feeling like somebody was looking at me. And we made eye contact, and it kind of ducked a little bit again, and then peeked out and was still looking at me, and I ran faster. I just kept on going. I didn't slow down.
And this was how soon did this event occur before you saw the creatures on their treehouse?
When I saw them on my treehouse, I was about 7, and when that occurred, I was like 13.
Did you want to go in there and take a look? What was in there? I mean, what was your...
Yeah, you know how your mind works really fast. I saw the eyes. We made eye contact, and I knew it was there. And at this time, this was several years after I'd seen those same kind of eyes when I was a kid. These eyes looked similar to the eyes I saw on top of the treehouse with those 3 things. They were a red glowing eye. It was like had like a nightlight glow to it and luminescent.
Okay.
So... yeah, I was thinking for a split second that this might be my chance to go in there and grab a hold of this thing, and is it real, is it not real? But I was too afraid. I knew it was looking at me. I knew it was real, and I wasn't going to go in there, and I just kept running. And I didn't say anything about it, because I just felt like when I made eye contact with it, and it saw me, I felt like it knew it could hurt me. Like I felt like I didn't want to mess with it.
Okay. Yeah, well, I can understand that too, because not many people want to face their, especially a kid.
Yeah.
Not even adults do that. They don't. Lane and I have talked about that many times. When there's a dark place, most people don't want to go in the dark place.
Yeah, right.
And you don't want to face that, whatever that is in the dark. You don't want to face it. So I don't blame you even as a kid.
There could have been more than one. I just saw one.
That's just it.
But I don't know, because last time I saw 3.
Well, that's just it. You barrel off in there. And we say this many times. When you see one, don't be surprised if there's not another one around or how many others around. You don't know. And I think that's one thing when people listen to these encounters and everybody gets this vigor to go out and I'm going to be an investigator and do this. I understand. It's intriguing. It's exciting. It's terrifying. It's all those things wrapped into one. But the thing of it is, you need to go with a plan and understand that if you go out, this is not something to play with. This is real stuff. As much as what people say it's fantasy, it's not fantasy. And it's a matter of you've got to be smart. Now, you've got to be on your guard and have some contingency plans.
And there's a difference between if you're trying to investigate and go get a hold of something and being prepared versus if you're just running from your house to your grandmother's house and stumble upon this.
Right. And everybody says, well, I'll just shoot one and put it in my truck and I'm going to take some pictures. And, well, it's easy to say, but when it gets right down to it, it never happens the way you say.
Yeah.
And it's always when you least expect it. A lot of people will say, well, Lance, if this happened and this happened, show me some pictures. Well, here's the thing. Not everybody's running a camera, a GoPro, or whatever 24/7 while you're driving, while you're playing, while you're working, while you're gardening, while you're playing with your pets. It doesn't happen that way. You see these things when you least expect it, and the last thing that's on your mind is, wait a minute, let me go get the photo, let me get the picture. You're in fright. You're going like, what? What?
Trying to process what's going on.
And then by the time it's all over with, a couple days, you go, oh, I should have got a picture.
Yeah.
With all the technology that we have, and especially when everybody usually has smartphones, they carry them around in their pockets, you're not thinking about pulling a smartphone out, finding where you can start recording or taking pictures. You're just in awe of what you're looking at. And again, like you said, trying to process the information. When you saw this thing peek around or something, it was looking through the glass. You saw half of a face or?
Well, no, I saw the whole face when it peeked. It was a rounded head.
Oh, it was.
It was a rounded head like this.
So that's what I was going to say.
Just like this. So you peeked around.
Yeah, I saw.
Peeked around and you saw that.
Yes.
Okay, well.
And then it came back around and I saw it's like not the whole face, but 3/4 of the face. Both eyes peeked back around too.
And this one, again, I know you said this, but you were 12, 13, what'd you say?
Yeah, I think when that happened I was 13. Yeah.
13 years old, which is 5 years after.
Quite a difference there.
So here we are, fast forward to present. You're getting ready to come up on a birthday of how old?
It'll be 37.
37. In your opinion, and that was the last time you saw that, was at the chicken coop?
Yes, that's the last time I saw that.
What is your sense, even though you've not seen, what is your sense, your feeling, your gut tell you if these are still around?
I don't know. I would say that...
When I say still around this area.
I don't know why they wouldn't be. There's more people here, and maybe the people have pushed them out if it's some kind of a creature. I haven't seen them, but I still get feelings that stuff is looking at me.
Really?
I just had it the other day. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. We talked about that. Now over here, the neighbors are kind of far apart. Everybody has like an acre or two, it looks like, which I love. Go ahead and just share a little bit about, and then we'll get into some other things here in a second. About, you said something was looking at you.
Well, so, I'm out. Lately, we've got some new puppies, and so I'm out walking the puppies and stuff a lot more in the evenings. And we got a fence put up, and anyway, I'll take them out to use the restroom, and we'll play around in the yard. And you get the feeling when something's looking at you. Well, there's some pretty high grass, a couple acres across from where I'm at.
Well, it's next door, but not really next door. It's a ways over there, but it's about so high. The grass and the weeds, is that what you're talking
Probably
about?
about 6-7 foot tall grass.
Yes, it's up there. It goes from here to the ceiling.
Yeah, so we were in the yard, my dogs and I, playing, and I just felt kind of like something was looking at me, and I looked over. There's a pond over in that grass, and you'll hear the bullfrogs and everything, and I felt like something was looking at me from over there, so I looked up that direction, and then Stella, she's the female pup, she alerted to that direction and was barking, and so I just felt like, something was over there looking at us, and it was time to go in. We went ahead and went inside. But, yeah, from time to time, I'll still get the feeling that there's something in the woods looking from. I mean, it doesn't feel like I'm threatened. Always, it's just like the feeling that you're being
Just
watched.
sense of being
Yeah.
watched.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been a lot of observation from whatever they are. And, you know, just by looking, just being here the first time and looking around, I mean, there's a lot of thick, heavy woods.
Yeah.
And there's no telling. I mean, for what I believe, you know, this is my little 2 cents, but I think that there's a lot more cryptid entities or beings or whatever they are, creatures that do exist. And there's just too many people, honest, hardworking people, that see these creatures, whether it's a Bigfoot or a dog man or anything like that. I think that there's a lot of other cryptids, obviously.
You just don't hear about them as much.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, because we only hear of the reported cases. You know, how many thousands of other cases that we'll never hear and people will take to the grave that they may have told 1 or 2 people, and whether that other person took them seriously, we'll never know.
Yeah.
Or they just won't tell anybody, and you know what that's like, not telling people. It eats at you.
Yeah, it bothers you. You try to figure out.
Yeah, it depends how close the encounter was and how terrifying it was to you, and all of that depends on how you were raised and so many other factors. But regardless of how you're raised, that was terrifying to see this. You can't plan on. I mean, even if someone says that's like now, you'd be surprised how many people. And again, I totally understand. You've heard this too. I want to have an encounter. I want to have a dogman encounter.
I say you don't. I commented on a channel. No, you don't want to have one because you won't ever forget about it. And when you're sitting there trying to go to sleep at night and you're thinking about this, you know, not knowing whether it was going to hurt you or whether it's going to come back or when you're going to see it again, and realizing that there's stuff out there that isn't explainable.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Well, and Wally and I have had this conversation for a long time, and he would say, you know, we talk about it a lot to prepare yourself mentally, and that's about the best you can do, honestly, under the circumstance. It's not like there's one caged up that someone can prepare themselves. Oh, here's what one looks like. But to take it, when I hear people that's taking things seriously, is when people say, I've never seen one, but I don't know if I really want to see one. Or if someone has seen one, they go, you don't want to. I wish I'd never seen it. I've never met anybody that has seen a dog man that we've interviewed that said they're glad they saw it. It was there was never a nice encounter. It was always something that scared them terribly, even if it wasn't a direct encounter where they saw the eyes, but they just saw the body. I don't mean to ramble on, but it's just a matter of people have to take this seriously. And when you meet someone like yourself that's affected for such a long time, and you're a pretty normal guy, you got a beautiful family, and you're a hard worker that I've known you, and so, I mean, you're well adjusted, in other words.
Just a regular person.
Yeah. And so, for people to say, I wish they would have one, or I got to see one, you be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, you see something like that challenges your whole belief system, and what you know is reality. You know, this is the kind of stuff you see in a movie or science fiction or what. This isn't something that's real, right? According to if you've never seen it. So when you see that, you'll have to deal with that forever. I mean, there's no way to. It's going to totally change your reality from that point on.
Yeah. Well, and then it has with Lane when his encounter. You know, it kind of set us on this quest, and that's one of the reasons why we have this channel. One of the things I want to get into, and that's why I kind of want to let Lane here too, I thought it was interesting, is with some of the things that you talked about, which we'll get into the planes and helicopters here in a second, but when you were a boy, you were by yourself, and you were at the trailer, we're going to go to your second. Tell us about the evening or the night that you went to the back door of the trailer and you had this light, if you would, go back to that time.
Yeah, so I was 9 years old then, 9 to 10 years old, and I remember walking down the hallway and opening up the back door, and it was just light. I remember seeing white. It's just all I could see was just white light, like white light came when I opened the door. It was just shined in, and it was a bluish white light. And I don't remember. I mean, I just remember seeing that, and then I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything after that. I remember when I the next memory that I have, I should say, is that I'm standing there inside when I opened the door, it was like I opened the door and I started to take a step out. You know, it's like I had a step out, and it was all. That's when I realized the whole backyard is white, and that's not normal, right? But when I come to, I was standing both feet inside the house, the trailer, with the door wide open. So, and it was dark. So, you know, and I couldn't talk. I know that I couldn't talk. I tried to speak, and it was like my vocal cords were paralyzed. I mean, when I tried to speak, air came out, but I couldn't make words. I couldn't make any kind of intelligible speech. It was just, you could hear the air kind of gurgling out, and that was, I just remember trying to talk. I don't know how long it was, but it was for a good 30 seconds or so, and I couldn't talk. And I remember telling my mom about that. I remember I don't know where she was at that time, but when I saw her again, and I told her that I opened up the back door and I saw this light, and then when I came back in, I couldn't talk. And so I told her something scared me so bad I couldn't talk, is what I remember telling her. And I don't remember feeling really scared, but that's what I was scared after when I couldn't talk. I was pretty scared. So it was like paralyzed.
Right. And you were by yourself at that time.
I was there wasn't anybody else there.
You weren't dreaming that you were walking to the back of the... This was...
I was
very awake.
I've never had any dream walking or anything like that I know of. So no, it wasn't nighttime whenever I walked out the door. I mean, It wasn't dark. It was just the light was overpoweringly white.
So when you came to, was it dark? I mean,
it wasn't like pitch black dark, but it was nighttime. Yeah, it was evening.
And you're standing there, and you come to, and the door's wide open, and you're staring out in the woods.
Yes.
In the trailer, you're in the trailer, but you're looking out, and you come to, and you're standing there.
I would just guess it could have been a couple hours from how dark from what
Really?
It was a period of time because it was dark and it wasn't dark.
So there was a time elapse.
There was a time elapse. Yeah, there had to have been time elapse because when I went out, it was white. I saw that white light, and it should have been bright outside because it was daytime. But it shouldn't have been overpoweringly white. Like a transformer blew up.
Okay, gotcha.
And when I come to, and I'm standing there, it's not nighttime, but it's dark. I mean, it's not pitch black, but it's dusk. You can't. It's dark in the woods.
So there may be more than a couple hours.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
And this was the time you had already seen these creatures on this treehouse.
Yeah, I had the box fall over in my room and stuff after we moved over. I'd seen the creatures in the treehouse. This was that. Next year and a half after that occurred.
And you were by yourself, waiting out. Your mom hadn't come home yet.
Yeah, I remember she was a single parent, and she worked as a manager at some fast food places, and so she worked a lot. And my grandparents, we all had the family land. That both houses were on the same pair of land. So I was 10. I mean, it would have been feasible that my grandparents could have been watching me, and I could have ran home to get something and was supposed to come back up there. And for all they knew, I was playing outside. Because I would run around outside and play as a kid.
Sure.
They put a shotgun in my hands when I was 10 years old. I mean, I grew up out here in the woods, so they just yell out when they needed me, and I'd come home. It wasn't like I was abandoned, but there wasn't another adult there at the house that I know, and I don't really know why I was there, but I just remember opening up that back door, and there was the light. I don't remember any sound, but the light was a bluish white light.
It was more than just sunlight.
It was blindingly.
It was blinding,
light
blue.
Coming in. It was like when I opened the door, the light come in and lit up the hallway.
And you had this sense, just before you said it, you had this sense that you took to go out back.
I just felt like I needed to go out there. Yeah, I don't know why. It was similar, I guess, to how I felt like that one time I needed to go to the treehouse for some reason to get something out of this treehouse. Sometimes I'll feel things. It's I can't really explain things.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that this primarily started. Well, yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, I would be too.
Well, yeah.
So
it just seems to me that it started at 6 years old, seeing these creatures on the treehouse or on top of the treehouse, and then as the years elapse forward, the things progressed.
Yes, I would say that's correct. Yeah, I wondered if that might be some form of night vision enhancement or something, because it was a glow. I mean, it wasn't emanating light visibly out as far as to illuminate to read by or something like a flashlight, but it was glowing like if you had radioactive night sights or something on a gun, and you can just stick it out there and you can see the light. It was that kind of a low-level glow.
An iridescent type of...
Iridescent, but it was bright red, and you can't mistake it. I mean...
Wow. That was crazy.
Blood red, yeah.
So what I want to do is kind of finish up here before we get ready to go investigate. We'll finish up here in a quiet place of the interview, and then we'll do some investigation before we lose sunlight. And then we'll come back for some nighttime. So one of the things that I want to get to is there's been a lot of experiences here. I happened to ask you during this if there's anything else been going on, and you shared a couple things. You were driving your truck, I take it, and you weren't too far from here, and you can tell us how far, and it was at night, and headlights have a lateral beam out to the side when you're on the road. Your brights kind of face forward, but they have a certain amount of lateral bleed out over into the field and highway. There's fields out here. You saw something, and could you take us back to that evening? How long ago was that?
So it was last year, or about a year and a half ago. I was working late hours, so it would have been 2017.
Okay.
Towards the end of 2017, maybe in October-ish.
All right. And so you were coming home, and about how far from here was this?
Within 2 miles.
2 miles. And these roads out here are paved, but it's farmland. I mean, it's just kind of county roads. There's a lot of dips and hills and potholes, and
it's rural.
It's rural, and which is normal out in this part of the country, in other parts of the country.
Well, so I actually stopped. I was coming home, coming down the road. It was coming up to 71st Street, and I stopped at this intersection, and I was listening to music on my phone. So I was changing the song. Stopped at the intersection, looked both ways. There wasn't anybody coming. Went ahead and went across the intersection, and it was starting to get dark. I flipped on my high beams because there wasn't any other traffic around, and I just kind of do that when it's night, because we have deer and everything running around. So when I flip my high beams on, you know how you catch more light out to the side because you just increase your light output. Well, I noticed something in the perimeter on my right-hand side.
Which would be passenger side.
Passenger side,
right.
Yeah. In the field. So I'm on the road. There's a ditch there. It's probably about 4 or 5 feet wide, and then there's a barbed wire fence, 3-strand barbed wire fence. And there's trees all grown up. It's an old fence, so there's mature trees in this fence row. Ears, like the back outline of ears.
So let's go back. You said that you caught the outline of something going from this motion here up to an upright posture while it's running?
Correct. No, it was like if you were leaned over doing something on the ground or bent over, and you're trying to upright yourself, and as you stand up and you square your back up, it was that last 25% of bringing your back up right before you're getting ready to take off. Like if you're going to get at a sprinter when they're down and they got to come up from the sprint, but when they get ready to take off, it was that they were getting ready to stand up, and I saw this humanoid figure. I saw shoulders.
So we just ended here. We had the camera stopped here again. When you saw this thing, it was standing up, and I was just listening to you talk to Lane here about. You estimated about 350 pounds based on just our weight and other people's weight, about 350. Now, when you saw this and you were driving, how did it stick around? Did it bolt? How did it?
Yeah, it was in the process when my lights hit it of bolting, I believe. Either it didn't figure I was going to turn the brights on, or there hadn't been a lot of traffic. There's not a lot of traffic out here all the time in the evening. So I don't know what it was, if it was eating something, I don't know what it was doing, but the thing came up and my lights hit it. I saw it upright itself, and like as soon as it took got its feet under it, it bolted. It ran away from me at an angle, like at a 45-degree angle.
Standing upright.
Up on 2 feet.
Oh, wow.
2 legs, yeah.
And again, it had this tail.
I saw the tail. That's what it struck me, is what I could see was from the back, is I could see the head, I could see ears, the outline of the ears, I could see the shoulders, and I could see this tail sticking out. Because it was at an angle.
Did it, I mean, how did it take off? Is it like fast?
I have never seen anything move fast like that. I mean, it was like super, what I was thinking when I saw it was supernaturally fast. And at this point, I'm saying it was like if you had something mounted with rocket power, a huge amount of rocket engines, and you had it mounted on like a rail system where it could move smooth. Because this thing didn't bob up and down on the ground. It was almost like it was hovering. I know it wasn't hovering, but it was like it was, and it moved with so much force and speed in a split second that it accelerated out of my. I mean, it was in the evening, but it wasn't totally dark. I didn't really need my brights on to see this thing, and it was out of my field of vision within a couple seconds. Like the whole duration of this sighting was probably less than 3 seconds, and it moved with such speed that it was like on The Matrix or one of these movies where you see. They cut frames out to make something, or like a cartoon. They cut frames out to make it look like it's moving fast and it's jumping around the screen.
Right.
This thing just jumped from my field of vision to halfway out of my field of vision to almost out to where I couldn't see it anymore, linearly running in a straight line at a 45-degree angle away from me with just that incredible speed. Just gone.
And that was last year.
It was 2017. Yeah, it was within
okay.
two miles away. The reason I know is because I was working.
Okay.
They do these shutdowns, and we work a whole bunch of hours. I was working 7/12s at that period of time, so I was coming home late.
So that direction it ran was from here. Which direction was it going?
Well, from where I saw it, it was running from the south to the north east.
To the northeast.
So southeast or southwest to northeast.
Was it an open field when it was running?
It was an open, yeah. So I was obviously driving on the road, and there's the ditch, and then there's the fence line and the trees, and that was the corner. That would have been the west corner, the southwest corner of that land. So it's a big field. I don't know how many acres. I would say over 100 acre. It's a pretty large field.
Yeah. And you didn't go back to see if there was any prints or tracks?
No, I've never crossed the fence. No, it's not. It's private property.
Yeah.
I mean,
was there any cattle out there?
I didn't see any cattle. I've seen cattle out that area, but I didn't see any right there that night.
I was just curious.
Yeah, the cattle pen is more to the north of where.
Well, that would be what we classify as a canine version of this dogman creature. I mean, for sure. I mean, apparently there's different type of feature or morphology characteristics of this dogman that, it's almost like a hybrid of a Squatch and a dogman, and there's different types, people say, but this one is more of a canine version.
What I thought it was a werewolf from the back.
So we're going to grab a bite to eat, then we're going to come back out, talk to my buddy here, and Lane and I were just talking. This area where he lives there's people that have horses, a lot of farm implement equipment. You got nice homes, you got scattered ponds. Again, it doesn't look like anything that you wouldn't see out of the ordinary. Across the U.S., you've got creek bottoms, all of this. So, and you've got some dense woods here and there. But what we're going to talk about when we get back is, one of the odd things like that, it was strange, is I asked him in our discussion, I said, after all these things you've seen, have you seen any strange cars parked that shouldn't be in your neighborhood, or helicopters or anything? I know it's a strange question. He said, actually, yes. We've had helicopters for a number of years, and he said we still of helicopters, and we have had some cars parked. It says Tulsa Utilities, but they'll stay parked and no one's ever getting out of the vehicle. No one's ever working. And it'll just be a car parked off to the side of the road, up the road from where we live. And I'm like, really? He said, yeah, I just never see anybody get out. So that could be just a coincidence. I don't know. But the helicopters, when he sees the helicopters, it'll be a combination of these Cessna planes flying low. But these helicopters, he said, will look like an Apache helicopter, like military. And when I asked him, I said, well, is there any identifiable numbers to these helicopters? And he said, no, they're usually black. And they have, like, on the belly side, they'll have like this bulb. And then I'm like, okay, very interesting. And he said they usually come out in the late evening or night, always. Late evening or night. And he said they would fly the helicopters that are not, you can't identify, they're flying a few hundred feet off the ground above the tree line. Very low. And he was saying that one of the helicopters had a very unusual light beam coming out of it. And it was so strong of a light, he said it's not a normal light that he's ever seen. So I don't think it's a coincidence between everything that he has seen in this area and experienced, and then now you have helicopters that are flying in and around this area, and he's never been able to find out from anybody why. If you look at the terrain, there's nothing special about the area. There's no airport close by. There's one way north, but there's nothing in that particular area that is of a special topography or terrain. Nothing that you could say, oh, let's fly over and take a look at the mountains. There's no mountains. Those are just big hills. So I don't think it's a coincidence that he's seeing these helicopters and low-flying Cessna planes in the same area where he's had these experiences. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think the activity over there, obviously around his area, has been well known to certain agencies. And I think the word has got out a long time ago, or they wouldn't be out there doing surveillance. They're doing their own aerial surveillance with this type of technology they possess. That possibly they're looking for these cryptids. They're trying to identify their location or patterns or etc. I mean, it's just not obviously here in this area. I think it's obviously all over the United States. But I know that they possess that type of technology. I know in Afghanistan we had all sorts of technology to locate the enemy. But here, back in the States, the technology is just like drones, just like military drones.
Exactly.
It's one thing to have a civilian drone fly over your area, but when you start having aircraft with unidentifiable markings on them, and their neutral colors, a dark black or a gray or something like that, then to me that's a clear indication of they're doing surveillance for some reason.
Well, that's what I was trying to. I mean, I'm trying to be careful not to just jump to a quick conclusion. Oh, that's what they're doing, or this or that, or this person's doing that, or that's why they did that, because that wouldn't be logical to do it. You're assuming a lot, but with everything else that's been going on, and as you're seeing, this gentleman, he's very practical, very straightforward. This is just what he saw. Why? He's not giving an explanation. He's just saying, this is what I saw. But it's very interesting. He's like, yeah, and I have these helicopters coming over and people are flying all the time about the same time, and I don't get it. I don't get it. And there's no military base around. So it's kind of one of those things where he's now starting to add all these connecting the dots. So what we're going to do is when we get back, we're going to get a bite to eat,
and we're going to grab Brother Bill. We're going to head back in a different vehicle. I wanted this vehicle here so we could, in a private setting, interview rather than being in his house with his pets and his family and everything. Just have a quiet setting. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go out and investigate some of these areas he's talked about. And tonight we're going to take the thermal camera and see if we can see anything in the fields, and see if we can't do some calling to try and lure something in and see if we can get something on thermal. And I wish we had about a week, you know, to stay out at his place and do this. I may come back. I may come back, and he said last night he had activity with the helicopters just last night. So it's fair to say it might happen tonight. I hope it does. I hope it does. And I hope it comes out where we have a little bit of daylight where we can see the helicopter. And we can do a zoom in and close up and see what we see. So we'll find out. But we'll take a little bit of an afternoon break here. We'll get Brother Bill, we'll get our cameras, we'll go back in a different vehicle, and we'll do part 2 later today. So we'll see you later, guys. We'll come back at you. Hey guys, so we're back. This gentleman's place here. We've got, we got Bill, we picked him up. We've got Lane over here. And so what we're going to do is he's going to take us through some of what we talked about in the interview today. And then tonight we're going to do some thermal and see what we can go down in this bottom and see if we can bring anything up. He's been having some interesting, what we didn't talk about earlier is the amount of, which we'll get into, is helicopters over the area, and there's no airport close, and the kind of helicopters we're talking about are not commercial. These are not like news anchor type of helicopters. There's no identifiable markings. He said they're kind of like an Apache looking black with interesting attachments on the underside or the belly of the helicopter. Very interesting lights emitting. So you don't want to jump to conclusions and say, oh, it's got to be this, but it sure sounds like it's just not a civilian type of helicopter and people just flying around. There's nothing out here per se that's an identifiable, something really cool to see. There's no beautiful type of structures or Rocky Mountains to look at. It's just a very ordinary looking kind of a valley that you would see in many states out there wherever you live. But there's been a lot of bizarre things happen here, and so we were trying to give this place, this episode, a name, and we're calling it kind of Skinwalker Valley. It's just so many crazy things that's been going on over the years and other people, and so we're gonna see. We just pulled up, and so we're gonna go get him and see if he'll walk with us and take us through some of where things happen.
Yeah, we talked about like the temperature right now. What is it, about 35, 37?
Yeah, it's about that right now.
Yeah.
It's supposed to get cold over the weekend and have a snow ice mix. So right now it's perfect.
It's no wind.
It's no wind. It's about I've got almost 5:20. Is that what you have?
Yep.
About 5:20. So it's going to get dark here pretty quick. So we still have enough light. We'll go out here and he'll run us through some of the things that we talked about when we were in the rig going through the interview process. So we'll go get him right now.
get too close to the trees along here, and when I'm walking out and walk through and then come up, and the ponds and stuff I'd fish are out that way. Sometimes I'd take off across the field, but this is the backyard where I play.
Huh? It's over here. I wonder what's in that barn.
This is barn. I've never been in this barn.
You never know what they could harbor.
Yeah.
Be in that barn.
Yeah. There's an abandoned house on the other side of the property over here, big. And there was a trailer growing up one time. I went along the creek and I was kind of exploring. And I got a weird feeling, like I could see where there had been animal, like small poop in there. But I was walking through it, and I didn't go all the way back to the back room. I got scared when I got close and turned around and ran all the way back home. So,
You just got that vibe.
yeah. So I don't know if he's wanting to kind of walk out and get towards the woods. And I figure if there's anything out here, it lives up in between all these hills. And
Yeah.
Because whenever
Well, you look at this now. No wonder coyotes could come in here and everything else. This is a small trail here.
Perfect cover down here.
Oh, yeah.
Anything
It is.
to hide.
Super
grass.
quiet too. Super quiet.
Yeah, I was hearing the regular owl over there. Did you hear it? Just
Mm-hmm. I heard just at the very end.
You hear a lot of
There's a
owls
dog.
out here. Owls.
We've had white owl that was about that big for years and had a nest that was like that, and I haven't seen it in a while. I hear owls frequently.
It's a giant owl.
I saw an owl. I don't know why it was eating, but I think it was eating a hawk, because when I come up on it, the owl flew out of the tree and it dropped the talon, and it was a raptor claw that was bigger than a chicken. I think it must have been one of the resident hawks. There's hawks that live in our backyard.
Wow, eating a hog. That's crazy.
It was the talon dropped on the ground, and as the owl flew off. I don't know what it was eating, but it was a bird, a large bird.
Sure. Wow.
You guys just want to walk the woody area?
Yeah.
And just like the woods to our back, and see if you can. If you call something in,
Well, what we'll do is we'll use.
it's still. I'll be coming from that direction.
Right here.
Call them in, yeah.
Well, what we're gonna do is use thermal.
Uh-huh.
Go back and get thermal, then come back and call,
Okay.
and we'll do that.
So I used to just come around here and walk. I mean, I don't know what you guys are wanting to do.
Well, no, this is fine. We're looking for anything that might get close to trends and breakovers and. This rabbit.
Yep, looks like rabbit or deer.
Let's see.
Looks like rabbit. Feels like rabbit.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Right there on the bed.
Now there's some more back over there. I see it. Is there any? There's no homes back this way. Just back this way a little bit, but scattered.
So your home, right there, at the very opposite side of this field,
Right.
basically straight this way. There's a house that direction. There's no houses this way.
Well, we'll just walk the perimeter here
Okay.
and just take a look, and then while it's still light, we'll head back, and then we can get the cameras ready, and then we'll come back. And we need some distance when we call. You don't want to be up against when you're
We can
calling.
go out in the middle of the field over here. It's big. The field opens up. We're just in the trees.
Okay.
We walk around here.
Yeah.
I thought you'd want to walk along the trees, but the field is right over here. We ride four-wheelers off of here.
Okay.
Here's your deer right there.
Yeah, that's a good print.
It's running through
It's
here.
good. Yeah. Deer print.
It's got his fawns up there. Yeah. Field opens up all up over here. We can go some here and call them if you want. Wherever you want. This field is at least. This is the quarter way point, so it's 3/4 away more, or maybe even halfway more to get to the other side of the fence. So it's a pretty big field.
Okay, so what we'll do, what we may do is now we have kind of a layout here.
I can show you Google Earth if you want.
Yeah, what we may do is go, and what do you guys think? I just want to make sure that we can do just kind of a big sweep back here and over here, do kind of this, and then go back, and by that time we'll need to get our cameras on a little bit of light, and then we can pick a place in the open that we can kind of get a position where we can. Yeah, I'm trying to see where we have a vantage point.
So you want to walk over here a little bit further?
Yeah, maybe that's. I can see where a lot of coats would come in here and anything.
Pond is where the trees are.
Okay.
So that's the pond. That's one of them. There's another one back over.
Well, the only thing with that is that. Go ahead.
That's an abandoned house down there that I told you about.
That's the abandoned house.
Yeah.
Let's take a look here. So, right down there,
Uh-huh.
you got a pond right here, abandoned house. What's here?
That's the neighbor on the other side. That's the back of his property, his barn, on the far side of his property. You know, his house is on the other end.
Okay.
And my creek that goes behind my house flows where all those trees.
Oh,
through
back
that
over
thick-
here.
Where all those thick trees are is the creek.
Okay.
about just being in the middle of the field.
Well,
So we
that's
can
what I was going to
scan
say.
around
The biggest thing, you want to have the advantage point for sure. You don't want to be right next to, like right here.
Right.
You would want to be here, and that right there you can't see enough if you're at the pond.
I say we just, get in the middle and we can kneel down. Kind of start calling. We could call here first, see what happens, and then call in this field over here, like later.
Yeah, we could do that. The biggest thing is those thermals is that you've got 3 foot, so you want to be looking closer to the ground rather than up. Because if you have a mountain line come in really low. But we can do that. That sounds good. Okay. So you do have a wide open field that's kind of open right there.
Yeah, you can get up there. You don't have all this brush around you. It's a little bit more open.
Yeah. And you said that when usually they're going to be coming out of there.
When I hear them, they're on the other side of the creek. Yeah. So there's this street at the end of my road, and then this other. So I live on. So it's like 100, whatever the next street down. So they would be at like. And on the other side of. So they're about a mile and a half that way.
Okay.
Is where I hear. I mean, they come all up in here, obviously.
Yeah, they do. I would say this is a really good spot right in here. And they'll take the path of least resistance. So this is a natural choke point right here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you could get down or right there.
right, well, look right here.
Okay. Yeah.
See against this?
Yeah, I'd have a hard time getting through you from this backside.
So right here, you just get deep in that.
Yeah.
And then you start
Just scan the field.
scan the field. You just pick a side right here. We get in here. That's what you want. Yeah. Okay. It is. You couldn't see. Some of these are calico color and reds and browns and yellows and dark blacks. And if they were down low, this foliage, all this sage and everything is 3 to 4 foot tall. They could be out there 15, 20 yards and you wouldn't see them. They could get in clusters back that and you wouldn't see them at all. They use this cover to their advantage. And when you get in bottom areas and you can't see high, they definitely can. They have the height advantage over you, but they also have the concealment advantage. That's what makes them dangerous too. When you get into this cover right in here, where it starts this time of the evening, it's about 6:30 here, March 1st, but still you got overcast skies. And they get in that right there behind those trees, you'd never know it. They just keep still. So we have dogs barking over here. We have some homes over here that have like a couple of acreage plots in this direction here. Dogs are barking here and there. But for the most part, it's really not that heavily populated here at all. Well, there's nobody back here. There's nobody back here interfering. You've got a lot of bedding down spots down here too. I mean, look, this is perfect for deer and game. You're protected by the here. You're protected by a tree line. You got the creek. You got tree line. Tree line. This area probably doesn't get a lot of wind. You can hear something coming. I don't see any breakovers. I don't see. Sometimes I like to look for, when you're looking at trees coming out in a trail, any type of hair.
Yeah.
I don't see anything like that.
Barbed wire as well.
Yes. Armadillo shell over there.
Just barbed wire to the ground.
Yeah, you want to make, this is why,
I can get a little bit.
okay, this is why you want to be careful, and you don't want to do a lot of nighttime investigation in some areas without knowing. You got to look on stuff like this.
You got it?
Yeah. Otherwise you fall into a hole like that, and who knows how deep that is. There we go. Yeah, you don't want to get tangled up in a mess like that.
Briar now. Briar there.
We're curious.
Well,
Is
see,
it-
I noticed it earlier when we had walked down here, and I just so happened to, you know, when you're scanning, you're looking for something else. You're not really seeing the picture. I looked over.
Yeah.
Careful.
That rock's solid. It should be. That's I always used it before.
There you go.
Somebody else. I'd only seen it coming. It was always coming from the barn back this direction. I don't really know where it
Can't tell.
lived.
I mean, it's got to be fairly recent, right? I mean, you'd think a coyote would take that away.
Yeah, It's been cold, so they might not smell it as well. But that hadn't. I was just out here, yesterday walking around.
You didn't see it?
So I saw a big footprint right over here. It was a dog. It looked like a dog print, though. I took a picture of it. It's right next to your foot.
Golly.
Yeah.
It's right there.
And it was big, but I didn't think it was like huge. I took a picture of it and a picture with my hand.
Give me it here.
It was about half the size of my hand, so I figured.
So
been a large
here it is
dog.
right here. Well, it could be. Where am I at? Where am I at here?
Yeah, just.
Here it is.
Yep.
Okay, wait a minute. Where am I at here?
By that yellow leaf there.
Here it is, right here.
Yep.
There it is. Shine that light right there. Now, that's big. My hand is bigger than this right here, but you can see the second, the third, the fourth digit metatarsal pad right here. That's a big print though.
Yeah. I got a good picture of it yesterday. Yeah, it was. I put my palm down there, and the print was the size of my palm. Basically, it was that size of my palm. So
that's not a coyote. I can tell you that right now.
Coyote, okay.
It's not a coyote. That's too big. No, it's not a mountain lion.
No, it's canine.
That's canine. Okay. That's not a feline.
There's mountain lions out here, but their print was always been bigger than that.
So it's coming
from that way.
Let's see where the other stride is.
I saw its back paws, and that's its front paw. It looked like the bigger paw, and it was. It looked like it slipped on the bank over there. Right over here. It looked like something had slipped right there. Because it almost looked like it'd been running, because the front paw was piled up, the back right next to the front. I thought it might have come through here.
It did, because it's heading in that direction.
And I followed it all the way up around the bend, and that's where I was saying when I went up and I got to the end of this fence line was when I heard the hoot owl.
Okay, we're going to take a look here where he was, some years ago, he said he was about 13 years old, and he was running by this chicken coop, chicken house, has a window in it, and this was some few years after he saw those creatures on his kind of a tree house, and as he ran by, he saw some face with red eyes in the window. And we're going to come.
Apparently, there's a bunch of stuff in here, but here's the window, and it was glass. And it was that bottom section there.
Oh, that bottom right
Is
section?
that one or that one? It might have been that section.
Wow. So if all this was gone, it looks like from that bottom window, you're talking 2 feet.
I think it was this section right here.
Okay.
It was on that side.
So you were running at a diagonal. You were coming out of here.
Yeah, I'll walk out there.
Okay.
If you want. It's gonna be hard because we'd probably be looking through here. But
Was this tree here at that time?
no. All this has only been here for like a couple of years.
Okay.
I was probably somewhere right about here.
You were right about there.
Right somewhere here, because the house.
Okay, so you were right about here.
So I come from an angle from that front porch through here up to my grandparents' house right there.
Okay.
None of these buildings were here.
And so you're coming by, and this tree, none of this stuff was here, and you look in that, you glance and you see a head with those eyes.
Down here.
Down here,
So
yeah.
I was probably just a little bit more this way, but I can't see through this building now.
Right.
The building wasn't here.
This building behind me.
Yeah, this wasn't here.
Right here. Okay.
Yeah, and I saw it right there peeking out. Now that tree wasn't nearly that big around.
Sure. It's probably a little sapling or something at the time.
Yeah, it was about half that size.
Wow. So something was in. Was there chickens in there at that time?
No, this was abandoned. This has been abandoned. The last time we had chickens, I think I was like 12 or 13. So, but I remember looking through one of those sections, and I
think now that I see that I thought in my mind I was thinking there's 3 sections, but there's 4 sections. That bottom section might have been covered up.
Was this door like this at that time too?
It wasn't. It didn't have these springs on it.
Was there?
None of this was in here. Basically, my uncle had a friend get kicked out, and he came out here and he built all these buildings and put all his junk in the past like 4 years.
Oh wow!
So this was all open. I mean,
so what was in here at that time? Was there
what was
grain
in here?
Feed?
No, there was not. It was. You see how we got some stuff. My cousins and I made this a little club for a while.
Okay.
And so we had like a little fort house, and then
Gotcha.
it was just junk. There wasn't nothing. All this would have been is a place to get out of the elements.
Gotcha. Wow.
And I haven't been in here, but yeah, I'm gonna say it was looking through. You know, it might have been that bottom pane. That just seems really low, but that might have been it because I don't remember there being glass below where it was looking through. I'm thinking it was right there, looking at me. I just remember seeing it. Like I said, it just took a couple.
You got a few fishing rails there.
Yeah. They're probably nice.
Yeah.
It was just a couple seconds, but it.
You got.
And like you said, red eye.
Yes.
Red eyes, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and this was not there. So that's what it was looking at me through there. Yeah. And now its head was bigger around than one of those, you know, its head.
Sure.
Not much, but like when it stuck its whole face out, and I'm guessing I was probably looking through where that building is right there.
Oh, that real close then.
No, I mean I wasn't that
No,
close.
he was a ways, but that building wasn't there.
You can't see,
but he was looking at that angle.
Yeah.
That was the line of sight.
Because this
Yeah.
thing was looking. I mean, I remember this tree here, and it was. I mean, it was an angle. My sight plane was an angle this way, because I could see it. It was peeking around this corner, looking at me, and I could see its face, and then it went like that, and then ducked back, and then I took off running.
Okay, so we got ready and we're back at the truck to get the cameras. I'm going through some testing that you're seeing right now. I'm just filming the guys as they're chatting still about what our guest had seen there at the chicken coop and on top of the treehouse some years ago. I'm just kind of testing this camera and checking out the heat signatures, looking around, seeing if we got a good heat signature. As you can see, it's about, it says 30 degrees Fahrenheit here. So everything is looking good with this particular camera. We did have some camera problems this night, but not with this particular camera. As you can see, white heat signatures that we had. So here we are. We're out calling. I'm to the right margin. We're calling here, and I've got Bill filming. And we're calling right now. It was a little difficult because it was kind of cool, and the call that Wiley made, it's a metal housing, so it was took a little bit to get going here with the reeds being cold. But we're scanning out on the perimeter here, and we're looking down in that slope area, and there's our guest there to the right, and there is Lena off in the distance, and so we're just scanning around, and again Bill's filming here. We're listening and looking. It's dark, but there are some neighbors' homes off in the distance that we're using to see if we can silhouette anything through the trees at this point. And we really stirred up some dogs across the way in the neighborhoods, a couple of miles, because there was absolutely no wind during this night, so the sound traveled really far here. But this sound is it has a lot of different tones to it. Wiley customizes in these predator calls by combining different pitches of sounds, some of the megahertz, and he's really a genius at this. And so this call has a high and low frequencies combined in it, so it sounds like a very large adolescent type of animal in distress or dying. And I know that sounds morbid, but when you're hunting predators, that's the kind of call that is drawn in. It's like ringing the dinner bell, if you will, is what Wiley would say. So you usually don't have to call very much. We stayed out about an hour in calling. We had nothing come in, so I'm just giving you, I've shortened it down just a little bit here to show you. We're looking for heat signatures. That right there you see in the center, that's just it's a rock there. Of course, you see a building there of the neighbors, and we're just panning across here, and there's our guest in the lower bottom, and then you see Lane. He's monitoring kind of the left side here. Again, it's very quiet. I walk around right there, and you see me. What I'm doing right now is I'm just discussing a little bit to Bill where I heard certain sounds, and that after calling, you don't need to call very much, and then we would move around. Because there was some other areas we wanted to not walk around too much and fall into some pits. There was some holes we wanted there. There was some areas we wanted to go to, but our guest said it probably wouldn't be safe right now. It's dark, so we actually stayed longer here at this area and called quite a bit longer than you would normally, because you only stay at length maybe 15 minutes in an area, and then if you're not calling anything, you move on. So we stayed here for about an hour and waited and called about every 15 minutes. Again, we had nothing coming up at this point in time, but what we've learned is that this is a very, very strange area with a lot of interesting encounters that this guest had. He wasn't the only one. He said there were some neighbors that had some strange things happen. So for sure we will be back. And although we believe that these cryptids can see infrared and game cameras, we're still going to go ahead and try to set some type of traps using game cameras and see if we can capture anything on picture or video footage. So we will be back, and as we attain anything and come back, of course, we'll let you guys know. We appreciate you guys so much, and thank you for watching Cryptid Brothers Investigations of Oklahoma. Take care, everyone.